Hi, I'm Mike Skramstad of cdocs.com, and welcome to the tip of the day. Now today I'd like to talk about proper anterior reduction when doing crowns and veneers. Now oftentimes when we do these appointments, things seem to be going quite well, and then we get to our initial proposal and we see something like this. Now obviously we have a pretty significant minimal thickness issue, and we have a couple options to fix this, but none of them are really good. Now this most often occurs when you're using a diagnostic wax-up. We all know how to reduce teeth properly, but when we're doing a wax-up, we're very likely changing positions of the teeth. So if we're just reducing based on where the tooth used to be, not where the tooth is going, we can very easily run into these scenarios. So the options to fix this is we could go ahead and select a tool like circular two-directional shape and go ahead and bulk out that restoration. That's not a very good idea because we're no longer achieving the goal that we set out to achieve. Option number 2 is we could go ahead and mill these restorations out with the minimal thickness problems, but then we're going to risk cement or even preparation show through. So the correct option is going to be re-prepping the tooth. Now, if we look at these preparations initially when we got the minimal thickness problem, we're trying to keep things in enamel. I generally go out with a goal of about 0.5 millimeter cervically and maybe anywhere from 0.7 to 0.9 millimeters in the body in the incisal. Now you have to remember the CEREC software works that the minimal thickness is measured from where the spacer ends. So many of you are using 120 microns of spacer and 500 microns of minimal thickness. So if you do that, know that if you prep the most perfect prep ever, you're going to need 0.62 millimeters to have no minimal thickness bubble showing through, okay? So we need to keep this in consideration when we're actually doing our preparations. So if we look at, did we have proper reduction on this case? Well, in fact, we did not. If we measure where the spacer was at 0.12 millimeters or 120 microns, and then we start measuring the thickness of the restoration, both in the body and where it really overmilled, even though that transition is not very sharp, it's still overmilled quite a bit. So at these thicknesses, knowing that we need 500 microns from the spacer, this is why the minimal thickness comes up, okay? So we really have to pay attention to these numbers when we're doing these types of restorations. So the key is, whenever you're using a wax-up, you always want to rough prep the tooth, and then you're going to transfer the wax-up in acrylic into the mouth, and then do your depth cuts through there. We always want to make sure we do the depth cuts based on where the tooth is going to be and not where the tooth once was. If you do this, you're going to have much less problems with minimal thickness and much better restorations.